So this is really the only Harry Potter book where Voldemort doesn't come up at all. And still, it's probably one of the best ones too. So you can say what you want to say. But I do like Voldemort. I think he's one of the coolest characters in the series. But I'm just saying, I think it's kind of funny that he doesn't show up in this, and it's one of the best books. With that being said, this is my review for The Prisoner of Azkaban. For those who haven't seen the first two videos, I'll link them down below. But if you want to watch this one first, just a quick guide to how I do things around here. I start by doing a summary of the book, then I go into my thoughts. Let's go in with a summary. This one begins with, as with the second one and the first one, all of the books really start with him on summer break, back at the Dursleys. Not technically his aunt, but his cousin's aunt, Marge, comes to visit, and she's just the worst. Basically, he gets mad, blows her up, not blows, but he like turns her into a balloon, basically. So because of that, he has to run away, because, you know, the Dursleys are pissed off about him right now. And while he's on the run, he gets picked up by the night bus. And he's taken to the Leaky Cauldron, which is the, you know, pub which has the entrance to Diagon Alley. And he stays there because it's a hotel too, and so he stays there until he goes off to school. While he's there, he already had heard from the Muggle newspaper that the serious criminal, Sirius Black, has escaped from prison. And you figure out it's Azkaban. It's a wizard prison. While he's at Diagon Alley, you know, the minister drops by, and like in the second book, the fact of, okay, he did magic outside school, he should be, like, expelled for that. Instead, he gets, just say, yeah, don't do it again. Later figure on, it's because Sirius Black is after Harry, and that's why the minister does not want to throw him out of school, because he needs to be protected, because Sirius Black is a dangerous, like, Death Eater. Death Eaters, or you figure out in the next book more about what Death Eaters are, but Death Eaters are Voldemort's, like, pals. They are the most evil, like, they're the Nazis of this world, basically. And so he goes off to Hogwarts. On his way to Hogwarts is when you run into the first problem, and that is dementors, which are the monsters who guard Azkaban prison, and they basically have the ability to suck all happiness out of your life and all. They just suck everything. They just bring up all this terrible stuff in your life, and they just suck all the happiness out. Very clearly a symbolism for depression and all. After the professor, who's in the same carriage as them, gets the dementor to leave, he gives him some chocolate, says that's going to help, and then they get to Hogwarts. You figure out that the Dementors are going to be guarding around Hogwarts the whole year so that Sirius Black can't get in. Things ensue, just like the year before. They're having a jolly good time at Hogwarts somewhat. You know, there's still problems. Snape is still being Snape, all this different stuff. And eventually, they figure out that Sirius Black is more than just a follower of Voldemort. He's Harry's godfather and James Potter, Harry's dad's best friend, who betrayed them. And he's the one of the big reasons why the Potters got killed. And thus, Harry now really wants to get revenge on his parents by killing this guy. Meanwhile, Hagrid, who's now been set free and been proven not to be the person who opened the Chamber of Secrets, is now able to teach magic at Hogwarts, and he's choosing magical creatures to them. And Draco Malfoy gets injured and acts like it's this awful thing, like acts like he got super injured. And so thus, Buckbeak, the creature that injured him, is now going to be put to death. While they're trying to comfort Hagrid before the execution happens, they get caught by Sirius Black, and you realize that Sirius Black and Remus Lupin, their new defense against the art teacher, and the person who's been training Harry how to defend himself against Dementors, is actually helping Sirius Black. And you're like, oh no, he's a really bad person and all. And you realize what's actually happening is Ron's rat was actually Peter Pettigrew, the person who really betrayed James and Lily Potter. Sirius got blamed for it in front of Azkaban. He did not come to kill Harry. He came to finally get revenge for James and Lily by killing Peter. End up not killing Peter. Peter escapes. You figure out that Remus Lupin is actually a werewolf. He almost attacks them. They have to get protected. Then Harry's trying to protect Sirius Black from the Dementors, and they both almost get the kiss, which is basically when the Dementors can give you this like kiss, basically sucking out your soul completely, so then you're like this soulless body, you know, almost like a zombie basically. This beautiful glowing light of like this in the shape of a stag comes out of nowhere and wards them all off. And then Sirius Black gets captured, and he's going to get the Dementor's kiss now by the order of the Minister of Magic. But then suddenly Hermione reveals to Harry that the reason why she's been able to take extra classes over the year is because she has this time turner, basically meaning that she can go back in time. And so they go back in time, they save Buckbeak, the animal that was going to be executed, and they save Sirius Black. And Sirius Black rides away on Buckbeak, and everything's going to be fine now. That's the summary of this book. Again, just like with the second one and the first one, I left a bunch of details out. There's a whole big part of this third book is the fact that Hermione keeps having all these extra classes, and they're trying to figure out why she's able to do this. I just mentioned that, oh yeah, this is why, but there's a lot of details I left out. I just want to keep it brief. These are my thoughts. Starting with, so in this book, one thing that's going on is that Hermione got a pet cat, and the pet cat is chasing Ron's rat, and you figure out why it's chasing Ron's rat, because it's actually not a rat, and it knows, it can sense that this is actually just a person pretending to be a rat, and so thus it's helping Sirius try to catch this rat. But the question I have with this, and why I think it's a problem, is the fact of this is their third year. Like, Harry was required to get a pet in his first year. Well, why did Hermione only get something now? Like, am I missing something? Like, maybe I missed over a line first and second book where it mentioned that she had a pet already, but she's getting a pet now. It's like, is this just an extra pet or something? But it's just, I don't know. It's just, why is she only getting a pet now? Like, she's required to have one in her first year and she doesn't. So I'm like, okay, that seems weird, but okay. Another big problem that's more than even just this book, but just a lot of these first books, it's always talking about what happened to Harry is so terrible and all. But it also mentions the fact that in the first Wizarding War, all these killings going on and stuff like that. But in the same way, like, there's a comment made in this book that is why I'm mentioning now. And it says, no one has had that much trauma as you have had. Later on in the series, you figure out that Neville Longbottom's parents were traumatized and into insanity, and it's like, ooh, that is awful. But in the most part, like, I was reading the line and I'm like, hold on, trying to make Harry special in that way. But in the same way, they have it so it's like, okay, either you say that First Wizarding War wasn't that bad, no one really serious died, or you say it's bad and yeah, guess what? Almost every family he runs into has someone in their family who died. You never hear the Weasleys talking about how, yeah, their uncles were killed. You just have all these different characters who died in the first one, and that you just don't ever mention, the only one traumatized is Harry. That's the reason why he's so affected by the Dementors and no one else is, because everyone else has had a peaceful life. Like, seriously? Maybe I get it somewhat, these kids might have been young enough that but they grew up with the Wizarding World being at peace now. So I guess, as I think about that, that's probably the answer to it. That's probably why. I don't know. I just, there has to be other kids out there who's also lost a parent or stuff like that. And how is he the only one? It's there's so many stuff that's Harry's singled out as this huge special because of this simple thing that happened to him. It's we'll get later on into the Love Crux stuff and how that whole thing works, but that's another example of okay, so you mean no one else has died to protect someone ever? Harry's the first one who's ever had that happen to him. After I'm done with these videos, I'm kind of tempted to put out a video just talking about the whole series altogether and the problems with Harry Potter. But one of the overall problems with Harry Potter is the fact that I think it's a fun story, but the more you think about it, the more it falls apart. Harry Potter just falls apart. That's why I can't put it on so high of a list of my favorite books, is because of how it's well written, but also not well written in the same way. It's both. Yeah. But anyways, moving on from that, the next problem I have is whenever Harry overhears this conversation about, guess what, Sirius Black is his godfather and the one who betrayed his parents and all. It's one of those moments where it's it is kind of a, as we all know, moment where it's just I get why it's there, and I think I put it in stuff, the criticism to have, but in the same way, as someone who's writing, I get it, that it can be hard to try to figure out the best way to explain stuff without flat out just saying this. But in the same way, it's why are these adults having this conversation right now? They're going to this bar, as you know, Sirius Black is Harry's godfather, and this and that, and you feel I felt like they would have had that conversation somewhere else before that time. I mean, I think it would have been something that they would have talked about long before this. Or I get it, he's now out of prison, so it's okay, it's coming up again. But it's these people are giving these details, and you guys would have all known about this before this. And it's just okay, that seems kind of weird. That why are you having this conversation now and here when you know that the Hog's Head is a place where a lot of things can get overheard? And the last one that really just I was reading the book and I'm wait, huh? Okay, the Boggart has the ability, basically the Boggart can turn into whatever you fear the most. And Harry, it turns into a dementor. Makes sense. Okay, awesome. The only problem with that is then they use a Boggart to practice the spell Expecto Patronus, which is basically the spell that can ward off the dementors. No. But what I was wondering is, why does it work? In that case, this spell, because this is a Boggart, wouldn't the right spell be to use the spell ridiculous, something like that? That's the spell you're supposed to be using on a Boggart. And how is the Boggart able to, it takes the form of a Dementor, and then it starts sucking his soul out, and it starts sucking all the joy out of him. Just like on the train, he passes out because of that. How does a Boggart have the abilities of a Dementor? No one ever addresses this. How does it work? How does a Boggart, when it turns into a moon for Professor Lupin, it doesn't immediately turn him into a werewolf? How does he have the ability to have the powers of what it turns into? Boggarts are really powerful if that's the case. I get it, they couldn't, they even explained why they couldn't just bring a Dementor into the castle from the practice on. They had to use a Boggart, but in the same way, it kind of okay, a Boggart shouldn't have the abilities of a Dementor. No. Anyways, but those are the negatives. On to the positives. Okay, so editing me here. I just realized after I'd finished editing the whole video that I forgot to mention my biggest complaint with this book. And so now I have to record this. Sadly, I couldn't just go back and record from the place I recorded because I moved. Since recording that video, I moved and, you know, I shaved down my beard. Like, I look slightly different, so it would look out of match. So now I have to be out of match. But yeah, my biggest complaint with this whole book was the time travel. When I first watched the movies, when I got to that scene, I'm like, hold on, what? No, don't do this. And while it's a little bit better in the book and better explained, as I explained in my summary about the fact, you know, when it reveals that she was time traveling, that's how she was able to take the extra classes. It makes sense. But in the same way, it was still like, especially in the movie, it was a problem. But we're talking about the book, so time travel is one of those things. I love time travel. As you get to know me more and read my books, you're going to realize I'm not much of a science fiction writer, but in the same way, there are science fiction elements put into my book. Because one of my favorite topics is that of the multiverse. I love the idea of the multiverse, and you hear me talk about it more throughout the years. Also, just once I release my books, you're gonna have people probably asking, why am I such a big fan? And I'll explain. They'll probably I might even write a whole book just talking about the multiverse and how it ties in my opinion, ties into us to certain things. Because it really helps me a lot. But I love the multiverse. I love time travel. Movies have those. I love that. Harry Potter was one of those that was just like when I watched the movies and now when I read the book, it was like, I just felt like it was not out of place. So yeah, it makes sense why it would be in a book all about magic and all, but in the same way, it was just like, it was, honestly, I kind of feel like it was in the same way as Endgame. I didn't mind it as much in Endgame, but in Endgame, where it's just like, okay, they put themselves in a corner, so they just added time traveling to get themselves out, and then never really used it again after that. Like, in the same way, this book has the same problem. It felt like, yes, she probably on purpose made it so this would happen, so that they would have to go do time travel, but in the same way, it just, when that happened, I'm like, no. If I like time travel when it comes to, like, okay, time travel for the whole story, instead of it like, oh, in the last 20 minutes of the movie or last couple chapters of the book, suddenly time travel is a thing. And then it just gets forgotten about for the rest of the series for good reasons. But yeah, I'm like, no. So yeah, that's my biggest complaint. I can go on this for like ever, but in the same way, I kind of don't care to right now, just because, you know, this was supposed to be a part of the original video and somehow I missed it, and now I had to record it weeks later and I'm finally editing it because, you know, that's life for you. And again, I moved, and so I can't just go back and break into someone else's house and finish recording that. I have to just finish it here. Yeah. Anyways, on to the positives. One big positive I would say about this, just like as I said with, you know, the first two ones, I watched the movies before reading the books, and so when I was watching this movie, and just like with the second one, where I was surprised when it's like, what? Tom Riddle is actually Lord Voldemort, and he's not actually a good guy? Like, what? This is insane. In the same way, even more so than that, I was fully convinced that Sirius Black was the bad guy. And so when Remus Lupin shows up and helps him, I'm like, he was working with the bad guy the whole time, and then you realize, no, Sirius Black is a good guy. It blew 14-year-old me away. It's just like, what? This is insane. This is such an awesome plot twist. If I was watching the first time from now, I might have actually picked up on that, but for some reason, when I will admit that when I was watching these movies for the first time, I was watching them while I was playing Minecraft, so I was half paying attention, so I probably didn't pick up on the little details that set it up, but yeah, these plot twists in the second two, I think they did a really good job with them in the movies, and even especially in the books and all. I will say it is kind of strange, the fact that they just suddenly had to stop and like, hey, let's go through this whole explanation for what's going on in the past and what your father was like and all the, like, dude, the rat's right there, kill the rat and then go over this stuff, like, go over it later, like, don't do it now. And because of that, he got away, and spoiler alert, this next book, Voldemort comes back to life because of that decision. So in that scene, I'm like, I love the scene, but also in the same way, speed it up, let's go. And like, even Sirius Black is like, can we move on? Like, I need to kill this guy. And that's kind of a negative, but also in the same way, I did like that part of the book too, so I'm like, I can't really put it as too much of a negative, but yeah, I really like that. Overall, I think this book, I'll give it a 7 out of 10, just like the first one. it has its moments, it has its bad moments too, but there's even more setup to what's going on in the overall story. I love the fact that they have the introduction of dementors in this, because that's a big part of the rest of the series, and like you really understand the wider wizarding world. Like that's something I really didn't talk about in the first two books, but each book, like a good book series should, each book expands the world more. Like, the first one was just Diagon Alley and Hogwarts, and there's a little bit of detail of stuff going on that. The second book, like you mentioned that the Ministry exists, but now it's like you get to meet the Ministry of Magic. The second one, you get to even more meet the Ministry of Magic. You get to understand what's going on in the wider world, Azkaban, and how the wizarding world is affected by this. And then in the next one, that's where you meet other schools, and it's slowly advancing. So I really like that in this book, how this one expands in a safe way, in a good way. It's not too much, but it expands the world just enough that you can, okay, you understand this story more and more. We're expanding more and more. And I'm like, okay, I like that. So overall, yeah, I think this one was a really good one. This was one of my favorites when I first read the books, and it still stands up as a pretty good one. It's not my favorite, but we'll get into my favorite ones later, because honestly, spoiler alert, it's probably the last three. They're probably lined up. I'll explain which ones go where with those. But with that being said, if you want to see when I put out my video for the Goblet of Fire, consider subscribing. Thank you guys for watching. Peter Wherry, signing off.